Karl-Anthony Towns is heading to the New York Knicks, and all of a sudden the Eastern Conference is looking like an absolute wagon. What does this trade mean for the Celtics? And why would the Knicks and Timberwolves do this so close to training camp? We got you covered right here on the Celtics pod. 3 a.m., my phone goes off. I forgot to put it in sleep mode. Woke me up. I was not happy. I definitely was not happy. Reached over, checked my phone just in case, it's important. Maybe someone's texting me. Someone's like, well, got to check. No, it's a Shambhala. It's just out here telling me straight up that Karl-Anthony Towns has been, and credit to whoever put that on Twitter. I did not coin that. Credit to them, but that's what we're going to call it from now on. Telling me that Towns have been traded from the Timberwolves over to New York. And all of a sudden, the Knicks are the second best team in the East. And there's going to be people that want to argue that they're the best. And they can. They'll be wrong, but they can make that argument. Tim, what did you think when you saw the news come through?
Kind of felt like it came out of left field. And from a Knicks standpoint, I think they finally added a big man who can run that two-man game to its full potential. Like, you actually have a legitimate second star alongside Jalen Brunson. It feels like the Knicks are just about set up to be the second team in the East, to be a team that could actually challenge the Celtics. And they sort of broke new ground, I think, in that top three in the Eastern Conference. I don't understand it fully from a Minnesota standpoint. I still don't. We've talked about it a little bit, but I don't know if this is a cap maneuver or it's a fit thing, but we know for a fact that Karl-Anthony Towns did not request this trade. And I don't know. I'm interested to see how it's going to work out in terms of Minnesota, because they're coming off of one of their best playoff runs in a long time. And all of a sudden now you've gone ahead and traded away a key piece of that. I don't know how that's going to impact things for them. But for the Knicks, my immediate thought is just this is a legitimate all-in move. If them trading all of those picks for Mikal Bridges was not all in, this is all in right there. And so it's very, very cool from a Knicks perspective.
You know what worries me? The last time an all-star big man got traded from the Timberwolves, a team went and won a championship that season. Lower your voice. They did. Anything was possible 2008. But jokes aside, if you look at the moves the New York has made since December, where they went and got OG Anunoby in December, improved their two-way play, rapidly improved their wing defense, picked up Bridges, who's super switchable, can get a bucket, can play make, can do a bunch of different stuff. It's not a Knicks podcast. You want to know what Bridges brings to the team? Go and watch a Knicks podcast. Knicks Film School will probably be your best bet. Shout out to John McCree and those guys. Then they go and pick up Karl-Anthony Towns. You put them with Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and everybody else that's there. All of a sudden, they look like a serious threat. One thing that worries me the most when I look at this team is they're going to be able to play Boston right at their own game. They're going to be able to go toe-to-toe. They're going to be able to spread you out in a 5-out. They can run you in so many different ways that it makes life super difficult for Joe Mazzulla in terms of just figuring out matchups, figuring out counters, because now you're facing a team that's built themselves in your image, but with a bit more of a steeliness to them because it's a Tibbs team. We'll talk about that in a moment, right? So we can talk about what this means for Boston. Just in terms of Mini, I expect Naz Reid to kind of slide into that starting lineup. I think Dante DiVincenzo was the golden goose in that trade for them. That was what really enticed them to go for it. I think Randall was the salary matching guy. And if it doesn't work with Randall this year, you can let him go in free agency. You can look to flip him closer to the trade deadline. I'm not sure if he'd be eligible now. He's just been traded. Somebody who knows the CBA can tell me that.
3 months, I think, before it can be aggregated in any deal.
So he should be available. Trade deadline's not until February 6th. So it should be okay. You can flip him. You can move on. I don't think that the fit between Randall and Gobert is ideal, which is why it makes more sense to put Naz Reid in that starting lineup. He can shot very similar from the perimeter, around that 40% on around 5 attempts a game, the same as what Cat did last season. You bring in DiVincenzo, who shot around about 40% on 8.3 attempts per game, roughly. So you drastically improving your perimeter creation, your perimeter shot making. DiVincenzo's a dog, a D-A-W-G dog. Mini, I'm not sure why they do this, though. This is a year too early of a salary dump with Towns' contract. For New York, all of a sudden, everything's solidified for them. They've extended Brunson. They've just brought in Towns on the first year of the contract extension. You've got all of your Nova guys minus DiVincenzo now. I see why New York did this. I still question a little bit why Minnesota would. There needs to be, maybe they just didn't think Cat was the right guy. Maybe this was the best they thought they were going to get. Me personally, I see it as a salary dump that came a year too early because they could have been contenders again this year. And they might still be, who knows? But I'm not putting all my chips with Gobert.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like when Minnesota talking about going all in, when they traded all of those assets to get Rudy Gobert to play alongside Karl-Anthony Towns, there were questions about fit. In the very first year, that trade got canned pretty hard. And then they finally made it work, and they were playing really, really good basketball. And now you're at a standpoint where they moved on from Karl-Anthony Towns, basically unprompted. So it has to, there really are no other motives outside of, hey, maybe there was something going on behind the scenes there. Or maybe it's simply that they're just being cheap, which is something from a Minnesota Timberwolves standpoint has kind of been their reputation. It's not like Randall is a fantastic, better fit for them. That still kills their spacing. Their spacing got worse for Minnesota. So I don't know if that's something that they eventually, again, look to move Randall down the line, but I don't love it from a Minnesota standpoint. They added that pick from Detroit. You've got the protections on that, right? It's a first rounder from Detroit. Do we know the exact protections?
I'm not sure if this is 100% factual, but it's what's in a group chat that I'm in. Protected 1 to 13 in 2025, protected 1 to 11 in 2026, 1 to 9 in 2027. If it hasn't conveyed in those 3 years, so if Detroit stink for the next 3 years, then it becomes a second rounder in 2028 and it'll convey. Considering what you've gave up, considering you just gave up your all-star guy that at one point was seen as a franchise cornerstone before Edwards came in, you don't even really have a viable shot at a star. So I don't understand why this pick would be deemed valuable in the slightest. The most logical expectation is you probably get a lottery pick in 2027, maybe, depending on how Detroit do. And if not, then you get a second round pick for Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, they're banking on it conveying.
You must and it can't convey because it's protected 1 to 13. So you're not, where are you finding an all-star level guy? You're not getting a Cooper Flag because it's protected.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what you might get a very end of lottery guy this year, a very end of lottery guy next year, or a mid lottery guy the year after. None of those are going to give you what Towns gives you. Maybe, most likely not.
It's the mystery box.
So you must really have liked the idea with DiVincenzo. That must have been like, you were dreaming about that shit. That was a wet dream for you to want to pull the trigger on that deal straight away. I'm not sold. I don't understand it.
No.
That's not my problem. We're a Celtics podcast. So here you go. This is our thoughts on what it means for the Boston Celtics. Cue transition. See what I did there? Magic. Jokes aside, I probably didn't even put a transition in there because I would have forgot. Jokes aside.
I won't let you.
With it now, man. I mean, this is what we're doing. For the Celtics standpoint, I'm not too worried. I do think that the Knicks now are the genuine number 2 in this Eastern Conference. And I think that if we're being real, they could win a couple of games against the Celtics. I'm not saying they could win a series. They could potentially, maybe, but I think Boston are just, they've been together longer. There's been a lot of upheaval in New York. Maybe they're a year away from being true contenders. They've got to learn each other's tendencies, build some habits, get everybody on the same page. Now, I know a lot of people are like, Towns can't defend. He's not going to work with Tibbs. It didn't work in Minnesota when Tibbs was there. My counter to this is when Tibbs went to Minnesota, Tibbs was walking into Karl-Anthony Towns' house. That was Towns' house. That was Wiggins' house. It was Butler's house. Tibbs was the last one through the door, so he was the new guy. It's not the same. Towns is coming into Tibbs' house. Tibbs has built this team. He's constructed it brick by brick. Everybody's his guy. They all, like, from what they say in the media, they all love playing for him. Towns can't go in there with the same attitude he would have had in Minnesota because it won't fly, right? And that's a risk that New York must have weighed up. Yeah, people say he can't defend. He did a good job against KD this year, did a good job against Jokic this year. Like, he's done good jobs against guys, and he's a much better offensive player than what Randall is. Gives them that 5-out spacing. I do think they're a problem for the Celtics this year. I think their wing defense is going to be interesting against Jalen and Jason. I'm very intrigued to see how White and Holiday deal with the threat of Brunson, and how Boston look to hunt Brunson without being dragged out of their own offensive system, right? Like we see that with teams when they're hunting Hauser. They'll become so laser focused on trying to hunt Sam Hauser in actions that they'll take themselves out of the system. Be interesting to see how Boston navigates that. And then big man, Towns is physically more imposing than what Porzingis is. Porzingis is probably a better defender, better rim protector. Both of them are high-level three-point shooters. I don't know who I'd lean on as the better passer there. I think we were being fair. It's going to be tough, man. It's going to be real tough. That's going to be a series, especially when you factor in the two different gardens and the fan bases.
Yeah, I think the skill sets really is like what's going to make a big difference for the Knicks. I think it gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of their wings. Again, going out and getting Bridges, and then getting OG Anunoby, not in that order, but having those two wings in the building was already going to make them a problem on top of having Josh Hart. And then you went out and you got a legitimate star big man. That's probably the best big man the Knicks have had in a while, I think, in my mind. So you're adding somebody with the offensive capability of being able to spread the floor, to be able to run a two-man game with Brunson. I keep going back to that because I think that's really what the Knicks' bread and butter is going to be, is having two legitimate stars surrounded by that cast of players that they have. It's going to make them a legitimate threat. I think the biggest thing that they take a hit on here, from a standpoint of, do the Knicks improve? Offensively, they're going to be better. I think they'll be stronger. They've got better spacing than what they were going to get with Julius Randle. However, I do think defensively, they're going to take a little bit of a hit because Cat he's gotten better defensively, sure, but he's never been that lockdown defender. And I don't know how that's going to change with New York. And I think
sorry, just to put in there, I think for me, it's if you've got elite perimeter defense, then you can take a bit of a gamble on a lesser big man because you can funnel guys towards him, you can take away the angles, and then you can be like, right, we're just going to follow you towards size, right? I think if you've got elite perimeter defense, you can get by with okay rim defense. It's when, and if you've got elite rim defense, you can kind of get by with okay perimeter defense. It's when both are okay or one's just completely trash that's the concern. But I do agree. I think their rim defense got worse when Isaiah left. Don't forget, they're still going to have Mitch once he's healthy, who's a solid guy, a solid option as a rim protector and rim runner.
Yeah.
And they've got Jericho Sims still there as well, who's quite explosive around the rim. But I do get what you're saying. You have lost some defense in Cat, and I think that's a fair argument to make. Sorry, I'm just wanting to get.
No, you're good. You're good. And I think that's a fair point too, because their perimeter defense is really where they made like heyday this offseason with really improving that in almost like a full upheaval of the system. If they weren't all in with the Bridges deal, they're all in with this one. I think the toughness is the biggest thing, I think, for Cat. That's honestly like one of the bigger catches, I think. That when I think about defense, like I think about toughness with Cat or lack thereof. And that's really where I think it affects the Knicks the most. But honestly, overall, considering what they gave up to get him, it feels like this was a low asking price. Like when I first saw the rumor, I thought it was going to be more picks. And I don't know. I was like, I don't know how many more picks the Knicks have to unload here because they unloaded a bunch to go get Bridges.
When they got Bridges, I was like, well, that kills the Cat rumors. That kills the Donovan Mitchell rumors because they don't have the assets.
They gave up like 6, 7, or 8 picks in that deal.
Yeah.
Granted, some of them were swaps, but like, I don't. And that's where we're going back to the Minnesota angle. It just didn't make sense to me. But like from a Knicks, this is by far like they have solidified themselves as a clear threat in the East. Like
this is
very
what I'm saying.
clearly.
They must have really liked DiVincenzo. Like I don't know how else to put it. Maybe they think he's the ideal guy to put next to Edwards. Who knows? And I'm going to be honest with you. We can sit here till we're blue in the face and be like, this is a bad deal. The people in Minnesota's front office,
they love it.
They probably know more about basketball than we do. So we have there has to be a level of like, well, they've ran the numbers and they think it makes sense for them schematically and everything there. So, maybe that's the right move. We don't know what went on behind the scenes either. I do want to just say as well, like, I'm cautioning against questioning Towns' toughness, mainly because as Celtics fans, we went through that a lot with Tatum, with Brown, with Horford. These guys aren't tough enough. These guys aren't dogs. These guys can't win. Until they win, they're not tough until they prove they're tough, right? And yeah, Towns has come across a bit soft at times. I get it. I don't like saying that because you don't make it to the top of your
metric.
professional. You don't make it to the top of your profession by being soft. You just don't. You
Yeah.
need to be cutthroat. And he's at the top of being a floor spacing big man. He's one of the best. So he's at the top of his profession. I will say that it's going to be something we hear a lot, and Knicks fans are kind of going to have to stomach what Celtics fans had to stomach for a while. And I'm sure at some points I'm going to say it just to, feel nice for me to say it for once rather than be defending somebody. But I do think that, you need to be scared of the Knicks a little bit now coming into the postseason. Whatever happens on opening night doesn't matter. That's not going to prove anything. If Boston blow them out of the water, it doesn't mean that the Knicks aren't a threat. If New York have themselves a game, that doesn't mean that they're better than the Celtics. It's opening night, for God's sake. Come the playoffs, though, if these two teams are on a collision course in the East, it's going to be a long 7-game series. There won't be no blowout. There won't be no gentleman's sweep. If everybody on both sides is healthy, that's going to be a dogfight. And to be honest with you, I think that's the best, because when you think about how close these two teams are to each other geographically, how big both of their fan bases are, how big of a market share they both hold, the Eastern Conference is better if these two teams are elite. The atmosphere is going to be ridiculous. You'll feel it through your TV. So I'm actually really happy the Knicks made this trade. I'm just not happy that the Celtics are the ones they're going to have to try and get through, because that's going to be a tough series.
That's a rivalry series right there, if there ever was one, especially considering how
It's gonna
close
be
they came
beauty.
last year. Oh, yeah.
Don't think you're not watching no beautiful basketball. Do you know what I like, though? And if you follow me on socials, you'll know this. Joe Mazzulla tends to open up his playbook more against the Knicks than anybody else. They run stuff last season that I only saw them run against New York. I've got folders full of clips. You've seen them, Tim. And in the Knicks folders, there are clips with labels that only exist in those folders. Joe Mazzulla just has a playbook for Tibbs. So I'm
And
really
has
interested
to.
to watch that from like a chess battle perspective. Both guys are going to hold things close to their chest, because these two teams, if everything goes the way they're both hoping, are going to see each other in the East. Now, Philly are going to feel like they have something to say about it. Milwaukee are going to feel like they have something to say about it. They're not. They could, but I doubt it. But this is going to be fun. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's good.
No? Okay, so
You can hear my auto feeder going off in the background for the damn cat.
it's all good. Yo, if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the Celtics Chronicle. Links in the description below. If you're watching on Twitter, make sure you shoot me and Tim a follow. If you're watching on YouTube, sharing is caring, man. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a comment, do all that wonderful shit. And we'll catch you again soon. Season's coming, baby. Peace.
Cheers.